Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't know what more to say. First of all, I thank you for being here because I know what your schedule is like.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Bill, we've been friends for a long time, and I was friends with your dad.
When did you do you remember your first job?
Sure.
What was it?
You mean full-time job?
Yeah.
My full-time job was working for Dan McLean, the Nash dealer in town, and he gave me a job on Kingsway. I was 19 at the time, at 1239 Kingsway on the used car lot, and he was starting a used car lot. He had a Nash dealership downtown, and he gave me my first real full-time job.
And what was the job?
I was the manager of the used car lot. And
you started as manager.
I did, but he didn't have a used car lot before, and it was like I hired my first salesman. There was a fellow named Joe Riley, and from Paul River, and there was three of us, so it wasn't a very big deal.
But did it grow?
Yes, it grew. The Nash franchise in those days was a good franchise, and then my boss, Dan McLean, sold the franchise and bought half interest in Bull McDonald, which now became Bomac,
right?
And he took me with him. So I became the used car manager at Bull McDonald at that time. Bull McLean, which they changed when we moved in.
And was he the last boss you had?
The last boss he was the last boss I had. Yes.
Because then you went into business on your own.
Yeah, there was 1 year you couldn't get a General Motors dealership if you worked for a GM dealership. So I went out selling savings certificates for a year, door to door. We had an organization called Westminster Savings, and they asked me if I would come and look after, sort of help develop it, which I did for a year. And at that time, I applied for a GM franchise and got one at 18th and Cambie.
And how old were you then?
32.
So it's a very young man to be. You had to sell General Motors on you?
Well, I'd worked for the General Motors dealership for 10 years, so I knew General Motors people, and they knew me. And so I knew something about the business, and a fellow named Jeff Humphrey in Oshawa, who was the big boss, gave me the chance to take the dealership at 18th and Cambie. But the person that helped me was at the Royal Bank. The Royal Bank loaned me $40,000. I didn't have any cash, and I had $7,000 equity in my house. And the Royal Bank, Cambie and Broadway, loaned me $40,000 to get started.
Now, that was a lot of money at the time.
It was to me, certainly.
Yeah. So when did you start to really grow? Was there a period of time when when I look at what you have accomplished since then to where you are now, it seems remarkable that one person could do that in a lifetime.
Well, you don't do it alone. First of all, we've had General Motors. I have a huge IOU with General Motors. They gave me my chance. I have a huge IOU with the Royal Bank, who started me and loaned me my first dollar to get going. And then it takes a team of people. And over the years, we've grown. And after 10, we did very well for 10 years. And then I made a mistake. I tried to take over a company in Toronto, failed, and set us back probably 10 years. And actually, in 1971, my net worth was minus $2 million because I got into trouble in 69 and 70. And the Toronto Dominion Bank stepped up and helped me through that period. And from then on, things started to get better. But
I remember reading that when you were in some trouble, you went to the Toronto Dominion Bank in Toronto, and you had to basically park yourself in the manager's lobby and refuse to leave until he saw you.
Well, that was the CIBC. They'd called my loan, and they never did see me. But it was the TD Bank, a fellow named Dick Thompson, who was the president that loaned me $2 million to get going, to get through the crisis I was at the time.
Well, it just shows I shouldn't operate from about a 15 or 20-year-old memory when I'm trying to recall a book. But I will never forget the fact that Jimmy Pattison actually had to go hand in hand to the bank, and the banks were not easy to deal with.
Oh, I stayed in the Royal York Hotel for 2 weeks, and I called the chairman of the CIBC. His name was Neil McKinnon. Every day for an appointment, he wouldn't see me. And this was the bank that had called our loan. But anyway, the TD came to the party and helped me, loaned me $2 million, and we managed to get through that period.
Do you have you had what you would call a mentor in your life?
No, I haven't, actually.
I bet you've been one.
Well, I don't know.
To many people.
I hope just on the good things, not the mistakes I've made.
Well, you didn't have a mentor. Did you have people that you admired or you patterned your life after, or that you kind of followed some direction from?
Yeah, my dad didn't ever make any money materially in this world, but my dad taught me, some really important lessons. Be honest, forthright, and tell the truth. And so I learned a lot of good lessons from my dad. But from a financial point of view, it's really hard work and common sense, and being at the right place at the right time helps a lot.
Going to talk a little bit about how you expanded, how you moved on. You're still very much in the automobile business, but it's changed tremendously in the past 20 or 30 years. But then you've branched out into so many other things. I'm talking with Jimmy Pattison, Managing Director, CEO, and Chairman of the Jim Pattison Group, and I'll be back with more right after this. Talking with Jimmy Pattison, Managing Director, CEO, and the Chairman of the Pattison Group. I said before the break, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you made the decision, or what motivated you, prompted you to move beyond the car business.
Well, actually, General Motors had a policy at that time that you couldn't take on other competitive products, and they, at that time, did not allow you to have more than one car dealership. And so I was restricted to grow with one car dealership. And about that time, CJOR 600 and the dial got into trouble, AM with Pat Burns. Mm-hmm. And so they canceled their license. At that time it was called the BBG, the Board of Broadcast Governors. And so together with a couple of fellows from CKNW, and we put a team together with Ralph Cunningham of Cunningham Drugstores, who put up all the money, and we applied for the license with 5 other people, different people. So there were 6 applicants, and the BBG gave it to us, and so that's how I got in the radio business.
And it's one of the few businesses you've been in, if I'm not mistaken, that is what you call a regulated business.
Yes, that's correct.
Because you're not keen on government regulation.
No, you're right. I prefer the little more freedom.
But despite the regulation, you've managed to grow that into quite an empire as well.
Well, we have 29 radio stations, and we have 3 TV stations, mostly in small towns in BC and Alberta. But it's worked out very well. It's headquartered in Kamloops. We've been very happy with the management, and the company's continued to grow, and we're going to continue to develop that company. And
how did you get into the food business?
The food business, I had a fellow call me one day. I was working in the car at the car dealership at 18th and Cambie, and I got a call one day from a fellow named Cunningham, who I didn't know, and he said, "You should buy Overweighty." And I said, "Overweighty? Yeah, tell me about it." And he said, "Well, it's in a small bunch of little towns, and the owner died, and you should take a look at it." So I did, and the bottom line is I bought the company. And I never heard from the fellow again. I wanted to do something for him, and offered to send him to Hawaii, he and his wife, for telling me about this company. And he never came and ever got his tickets, and I never saw him again or heard from him.
But that company has expanded and grown tremendously too.
It has. They got they have 124 stores now, and they've moved into Alberta and doing very well.
How do you keep track of all of these enterprises? Because you seem to be a very hands-on CEO.
Well, we meet with them on a regular basis. We meet with the management and their teams in different locations 4 times a year. Then we bring everybody together, all our managers, once a year. So I see everybody 5 times a year, including their key management, and as does our team. We have a corporate team downtown that that we have a small group of us. There's about 9 of us. And we go to meet with our various divisions, and we travel a lot, of course, doing this. And so that's how we do it.
You travel a lot.
We travel a lot.
I think a lot of people listening will have seen the 3-part series that Jazz Johal did with you and Glenn Clark, which was interesting. But it's 2 things struck me. The fact that you're still traveling as much as you are and as being as busy, and the fact that you actually go into the enterprises and talk with the employees. But I want to talk a little bit about the fact that you hired Glenn Clark, because as he pointed out, you hired him at a time when he was considered to be pretty toxic. He said nobody else would hire him.
Well, that's what he said, or that's what it appeared to be. But I liked Glenn Clark at the time, and I asked him if he, before I hired him, was he guilty of doing something wrong? He said no, he wasn't. And so, which as time went by, the judge agreed that he hadn't. And so I hired him before that and gave him an opportunity, and he's done very well. He's been a real asset to us, and he's in New York today. He travels a lot. He's well respected in the company, and he's continuing to grow and take on more responsibility.
But what did you see in him?
Well, first of all, he's a humble guy. He's not full of himself. And secondly, he's a hard worker. He's smart, and he's a people person. You know, people, if you get to know Glenn Clark, he's a very likable fellow. And I found him to be very straightforward. He's very not political. In our company, you know, a lot of times people get political, even in big companies and even little companies. But Glenn Clark is what you see is what you get, and I like that. And he's really been a good asset to the company. You
are the leader of, I think the introduction said, 32,000 employees. What defines a good leader?
Well, I think a good leader starts with setting a good example. You know, if you talk about, well, let's work hard, I don't think you can go to Hawaii and deal with it on a cell phone from the beach. I think you have to be there doing it yourself. I think that you have to set an example. I think you have to be absolutely honest. Integrity, I think, is the foundation of a business, of building a business. And I find most people in business are very honest. And in integrity, there's always some people that do the wrong thing, but generally speaking, I find most people are very honest. And then, of course, the key is you can't do it alone, so you have to select people. And the key is in any management group is selecting the right people. And that, of course, is not an easy job, and it's one that we work very hard at, is working hard at selecting the right people to run our businesses and to grow the company.
And do you take a personal hand still in all those decisions?
Every one of those decisions I do. The top people.
You are said to be tough and demanding.
Well, you'd have to ask somebody else that question that's on the other side of that.
Nobody said not fair, just tough and demanding.
Well, we set objectives, and we have standards, and we have goals, and we hold people accountable, and so we work to that kind of a game.
You were the face of Expo 86. What was that experience like, and what do you most remember from it?
What I most remember from it was the education I got dealing with the City of Vancouver government, the BC government, the federal government. And I think that's the education I got, and all the other governments we dealt with. I think that it certainly gave me an insight on something that I'd never been exposed to. So that's what I learned out of it, plus the importance of involving the community in a project. And one of the things we decided early on was to really involve the community being the province of British Columbia, in this project as much as we could.
Want to find out what you think it did for the province of British Columbia? We'll talk more about Expo 86. We'll talk about, perhaps BC Place renovation. The last time I saw you in person was at the opening night of that. We have a spectacular convention center that is attached to it by a SkyTrain link. Lots more to talk about with Jim Pattison. You're with Bill Good on the Chorus Radio Network.